Carabelle Studios introduced their alphabet, number, and punctuation stamps a while ago, and we've received our order. In today's video, I'll demo several options for using them, including simulating illuminated text, words, and backgrounds. We've prepackaged the more than 40 different stamps into sets of just the alpha characters, the numeric ones, or the punctuation marks, plus we've got them available as individual kind of a la carte options. If you want them all, it'll take just 3 clicks and you can get everything into your cart. And as always, the 15% off everyday discount is automatically applied, and in fact it's done before you put something in the cart. So this is how the stamps are packaged. You can see that they're color indexed, gives you an idea for how you might want to color. And this is one of the stamps. Like all Carabelles, they're cling mounted. We'll deal with that in one second. They all measure about 2 inches tall. Some of them are a tick more than that, but not a lot more. So figure 2 inches and you're kind of good to go. So this is one of our 3x4 stamp mounts. Just press it in place. It's on there and it's ready to go. So one of the most obvious things that you can do with the alpha characters is to stamp out a word. The numbers are really good for things like birthdays and anniversaries, although quite frankly they don't have to commemorate a particular event or thing. You can just use numbers randomly however you want to. And I'll show you something that I did with the exclamation mark that has nothing to do with punctuation but still makes a cool page. So I'm choosing to stamp with black archival because once it's dry it's going to be permanent, and when I come in and I color, if I'm using something wet, and I'm going to use Dylusions, ink sprays, and water brushes, then I know that they're going to be permanent, or the black will be permanent once it's dry, and I don't have to worry about anything running. So for me, I am stamping and then I am cutting out, but if you want to stamp directly on a background, you certainly can do that. Now this is our smooth and sturdy cardstock, which has got a slight coating on it, so the ink will take a little bit longer to dry on here, but it obviously will dry. So very easy to do. I've got some stamped on watercolor paper, so let's get all of this back out of the way for 1 second. These are long since dry, so in comes a water brush, and really, however, this is truly just like coloring. If you want to put large swaths of color in, you can. Or you can just go ahead, I'm just kind of squeezing some out here. You can go ahead and color individual elements kind of like I am here, which is really what I did here when I spelled out the word silly. Now you don't have to color at all, and we'll get to that eventually too. I'm going to show you another reason maybe not to color. If your background is busy and colorful enough, you can get away with just going ahead and stamping. So however you want to do it, I'm sure it will be fine. I like using ink sprays like this. I find it pretty convenient. The other thing, and I'm going to pull them out in a second, the other thing that I've been doing is I brought out my Gelly Roll pens. It's been ages since I worked with them, but I'm really glad that I did because, again, on another sample that's around here someplace with the exclamation mark that I will show you, you'll see that it's kind of cool to bring in, what do we got here? It's kind of cool to bring in the metallic and the Stardust, I think they're called. Alright, so let's just bring in some of these pens. Now I'm a big fan of the metallic pens, so rather than work on something that's wet, let's just bring this in. And for the sake of argument, if I wanted to, actually let's bring in this, it's a little bit easier. If I wanted to come in and start making dots a particular color, easy enough to do, and with the metallic pens I've got opaque coverage, which is really nice. The ink sprays obviously are transparent, so you always will more or less see through them, but when you work with the Gelly Roll pens, they're definitely going to be opaque. And however you want to do this, I'm sure it will be fine. This is about as easy as it gets. It's fun to color. Sometimes, you don't want to have to think really hard about what you're doing. It's fun to just come in and play, and working with these stamps is certainly an opportunity to do that. So let's talk about a reason not to color. If I bring this back in, this is a journal I made ages ago. Let me turn it around so I can find my page. Alright, so for example, you can combine pre-printed text like Dylusions. This is the bigger back chat part of the diary collection. And what I've done is stamped out the word idiot. So I'm going to replace the word idiot here with what I've stamped out. So I am going to turn this back toward me so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Alright, so I need to cut part of this off because this is part of another line of text. So this says, I'm sorry. Let's put that, I'm not going to press this down all the way for now. That way if I want to move it, I have the option to do that. So I'm going to cut the word idiot out. Alright, put that over here and get it out of the way. So, and I can already see that I need tweezers. Oops. Alright, so let's pick this up and just kind of temporarily stick it there. I'm sorry I called you an idiot. So here's something interesting to know. Technically, these are all uppercase characters, but if you want to do something a little bit different, and why not, because it's always fun to do those kinds of things, if you use the exclamation mark, so let me find them here. This is the this is the exclamation mark, and this is the letter I. Again, in uppercase, these are all uppercase letters. But you can mix it up like I did here, so rather than use the uppercase I, I've used the exclamation mark, and I've lost the rest of my letters. Here they are. I've used the exclamation mark as a lowercase I. Of course, if I could get the dot off the table. All right. And then I can put this here, and it says, I thought you knew. Leave it to die. She always has the best sayings. So if I were to go like this, again, I'm not going to put these down permanently, but I kind of like this arrangement other than maybe shuffling these over here a little bit. Now I'm not going to glue the whole thing down, but what I will do, because these are Dies glue sticks, are the best glue sticks you'll ever use, so really straightforward. Now the one thing that you'll notice, this has been cut. I find it really awkward to get in here. You poke the scissors in, blah, blah, blah. I never did a really good job of it. And then I took a class with Di again, who said, so cut it, because nobody will be the wiser once you glue it in place, and darned if that isn't the case. So I'll just come in here and I'll get my glue stick going on the exclamation mark that's doubling as a lowercase I. Put that there and get the dot done. Now when it comes time to glue something that has been cut like this, you just need to kind of line that cut piece up so that it becomes more or less something that your eye doesn't see. It's really easy to do, whether it's cut or it's just stamped like this, whether it's colored or it's just stamped like this. It really is easy enough to do, and nobody really is the wiser. Alright, so you don't need to see me do any more than that, but you get the idea where this is going to go. If I think that, and in this case I haven't really decided yet, but if I think that these back chat elements are too small, I can always come in with a Pitt pen. It's probably a good idea to put the cap on the glue stick. I can always come in with a Pitt pen and sketch around them, which will make them stand up off the background a little bit. So up next is a technique that I saw in a Bondu demo that I think is a just brilliant idea for making a background. In her video, Anna used a MISTI, but my interpretation is a little more loosey-goosey and less precise. So instead of a MISTI, I'm using, this is our 8x8 acrylic stamp mount. So these are my first attempts. They're okay, but I felt as though the characters were too far apart, so I came back and I stamped in between a little bit more. The colors weren't doing it for me. It felt like everything was a bit too much. I tried to soften with water because, of course, I'm using oxide, so that's always a possibility. Ultimately, I ended up swapping out my colors because gray is the hot neutral. I swapped out my colors for, this is Hickory Smoke. Now, Pumice Stone is another option. So this darker gray is Hickory Smoke, and this is Pumice Stone. So the way that this works is really easy. This iteration, I had my characters spread further apart, more like this, but for this time I tried scooching them together a little bit more because there's already some space built in around each of the letters or numbers or punctuation mark. And so rather than overspread them, I decided this time to try them a little bit tighter grouping. So here's Hickory Smoke. Now here's a thing that I learned at Ranger U from Tim Holtz years ago. If you want a regular application, you can tap up and down. If you want a lighter application of color, the best way to do that is to kind of rub the color on like this. You tend to get less on there this way. Now, if you overdo it, you can still end up with a really dark application, and I might find myself doing that. So here's Hickory Smoke. Now, I'm not even going to moisten this. I'm just going to leave it alone the way that it is. And I could come in and I could print this a second time. Let's go ahead and stamp this. And this is a background, so nothing says it has to be perfect, which is really good because I excel at imperfection. It's the perfect stuff that's much harder for me to do. So there is my first go-around. Now I got a little bit of an edge there. Quite frankly, I don't care. I'm not worried about it one way or the other. So if I put that off to one side and I grab another piece of paper, I can shift the way that I did this. Let's see, that's the Q there. I don't even know how I did that, but I can shift this a little bit and maybe change the orientation just a tiny bit. Now less ink on here is obviously going to be, or going to produce, a lighter option. Yep, and that's what I got. So it kind of depends. You can go heavy, you can go lighter if you want to bring in some water and lightly mist so you start to get a little bit of movement from the oxide ink. You can certainly do that too. All right, let's move that out of the way. Just grab a piece of paper towel to wipe up the water. Now, if you have ever seen what I think of as, it's not what I think of, it's what they're really called, as an illuminated manuscript, another option for these stamps is to kind of simulate that, where you take the first letter of a paragraph or a sentence and you use one of these characters, one of these alpha characters, and then you spell the rest of it out, whether you use cursive or you print or whatever. So that always is an option too, just another opportunity, another way that you can use these letters. Now coming back to what I mentioned earlier, which is that punctuation can be used for more than punctuation, that's exactly what this is. So this is the letter O, and I've surrounded it by the exclamation mark. Super easy to do, but it doesn't look necessarily like an exclamation mark. It doesn't necessarily look like anything other than this kind of interesting, almost mandala-like effect. So however you choose to use them, just think, for example, the Joker in Batman comics. He's got a bunch of question marks on the front of his costume. Nothing says you couldn't do something like that with the other kinds of punctuation or the question marks. Be fanciful and creative. There are no rules, and you should feel free to break any ones that you think exist. So this is an ellipsis which would ordinarily be placed like this. If you look at the exclamation mark, which I continue to hold upside down, you can see that the pattern on it is different from the pattern on the three ellipses. So really what you have is 4 different little dots that measure, I want to say that those are maybe between 3/8 and 1/2 of an inch in diameter. So you can use these. Nobody says you have to use it only as an ellipse or an ellipsis. So if I bring this back in and I come back to, where is that page? If I come back to this page, so I colored these and cut them out, and what I'm going to do is just go ahead and glue some on randomly here because they make fun embellishments. Nothing says they have to, nobody's going to know that they were the bottom part of an exclamation mark when you use them this way. So lots of options, lots of ways to be creative, lots of ways to be silly, in fact. These are Carabelle's awesome alpha, number, and punctuation stamps, and they really are perfect for all kinds of creating.